Hi everyone, welcome to THT, and today we are going to be focusing on four decks that are already part of the meta, as well as tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3, that I think I got significantly better with the new Executive Power, and I'm going to show you how I updated those decks using the new cards. A big thanks to Card Market for sponsoring this video, and we get on first with our first list, Piett Red. So as you know, I'm a pretty big fan of this deck. I think it's a very fun deck to play. Unfortunately, Piett Red has two major weaknesses. The first weakness is that it's a deck that is very vulnerable to aggro. It's a deck that doesn't have good tools to stabilize the early stage of the game. And the second issue with the deck is consistency. It's a deck that is extremely powerful if you can go turn 1, a good 2-drop, turn 2 ramp, turn 3, Piett deploy into a 6-cost spaceship, and then get into Devastator and then plays and curve in like this with spaceships. The problem is, like, whenever you are in a situation where you don't find the right card at the right moment, so you either ramping but you're not finding the right card to play, or you are getting into or you basically have all the spaceship but you're not ramping, the deck can basically fall apart very, very quickly. So this set is helping on the two with the two weaknesses that the deck had. The first issue is that we are having now a much better early game because we got Imperial Dark Troopers. Imperial Dark Troopers is a great way to be able to dominate the early game with a 3-3 for 2, which is just still a really great stat line, even though it's not as good as it used to be. And of course, the fact that it's a droid means that it can actually be pulled from Invisible Hand, which is really, really great. And you also benefit from the raid 2 coming from the invasion control ship. So it's really, really a great card to play early on in the game, and it's going to allow us to trade with enemy Battlefield Marine, going to make us a little bit better against Sabine, which is one of the weakest matchup, without degrading on the consistency of Visible Hand. Green-black is notorious for being a really weak color combination in the issue of the game, but the Imperial Dark Troopers really solve that issue for us. Another big upgrade for the deck is the GNK Power Droid. So GNK Power Droid is basically another piece of ramp, if that makes sense. So obviously it's not as reliable as ramp because it's a 1/3 that can be killed, but obviously not every dex is playing three attack units. A lot of people nowadays play 2/4s, or they play 2/2 shielded, or they play space units in space. So not every deck has the ability to consistently deal with your GNK Power Droid, and if it's not being dealt with, this guy is basically an extra piece of ramp. So one of the best things we can do is basically go attack with GNK, get our cost reduction, and then we can combine this cost reduction with Piett ability, and we can play an MT30 on turn 2, which is incredible. We can, of course, another cool thing you can do is you can basically later on in the game during your Piett deployment, if you go GNK turn 1, turn 2 resupply, turn 3 deploy Admiral Piett. So you got yourself 2 cost reduction plus 1 cost reduction, that's 3 cost reduction, plus the 5 resource from ramp. You can basically play an 8-drop as early as turn 3. So 8-drop as early as turn 3 is something that is, all you need to do is make sure that GNK Droid basically survives the second turn of the game, which is not, once again, against certain type of deck, is not that big of a deal. Is not that big of a problem. And icing on the cake, it's also a droid we can pull from the Invisible Hand. Obviously, Invisible Hand doesn't usually care too much about getting the GNK, but it's always kind of an extra piece of ramp that can help us putting like a Devastator or something. So it's still really great, I still think. So this basically, he's helping with the lack of consistency of the deck, because now we effectively have 9 ramps to go with. As I said, it's not exactly the same as a ramp. It doesn't allow you to get early deployment on Piett. It's a unit that can be dealt with, so it's not exactly another piece of ramp, but it's very close to that. I know that there's also Price on Your Head that you can play, but Price on Your Head is very awkward to use in this deck. So I've tried the card a lot, and unfortunately it's not really working out. Well, GNK Droid really goes right into the curve, which is great. So basically, we're able to reinforce our early stage of the game significantly without degrading on our Invisible Hand. Invisible Hand still has more than ever absolutely amazing odds to find a 2-drop and play it for free, and we still have some great set of 2-drops to play. GNK Droid really goes against those shielded units on turn 1, HK47 just a really solid turn 1 play, and then Vanguard Droid Fighter, not a great not a great turn 1 play, but a card that is really, really nice to get later on in the game from Invisible Hand. So get a bunch of droids. So we're still playing the Invisible Control Ship. I think that as long as we're playing the droid package, and as long as there's no better 7-drop, in terms of, there's no better 7-drop capital ship that FFG is willing to print in this color combination, we're going to be playing this because it just curves right into Admiral Piett, can be played on turn 3. And if we do have a few board with a few droids, it's actually a pretty solid card. So another big thing that the deck got is the Fulminators. The Fulminator, in my opinion, is a great addition to the deck, as it's kind of like a Devastator, but it also triggers Devastator every time it attacks, or has 7 health, which is in certain matchup is really key. You don't get -6/-6 by Luke Skywalker or Anakin Skywalker with double -3/-3. We cannot deal with them. So that's like the 7 health is actually pretty significant, and the fact that you can use the ability every turn is very powerful. So it only affect ground units, but to be fair, this deck doesn't have any problem dealing with space units, because obviously against space we can simply just use our own bodies to attack into the enemy. So usually this deck doesn't struggle stabilizing against space. What it struggles against is against the ground, and Fulminatrix does help with this quite a bit. It's not quite as good as Devastator because we can't split the damage. There's no combo between Devastators and Empire Bombardment, but it still remained a very powerful card, and it's just going to increase our consistency. Before, we were kind of relying our late game almost solely on both Devastators. Some people were playing Architects as another 8-drop, but Architects is really good in, like, it's really specialized. It's really good in the right matchups, but in certain other matchups, it simply just doesn't do the job. Fulminatrix is a much more generally powerful 8-drop for the deck, and I think it's a great addition to the deck. The rest of the deck is built the same way as I always build it, so no much difference there. In the sideboard, as you can see, it's just the sideboard the way as I always build it. We got some anti-control things. Bombing Run, I think, is going to become a great card in the upcoming meta. So yeah, I think this deck has gotten significantly better. I still don't think the issue that the deck has are completely solved. I don't think the Dark Troopers by itself is going to be enough to fix the aggro issue, and I don't think the JNK Power Droid is by itself enough to fix the consistency issue. I think still the deck is going to suffer from those problems, but those are definitely significant upgrade for the deck, and I'm excited to see if this deck can perform in the upcoming Secret of Power. Moving on, I'll talk about my favorite deck from Legion of the Force. It was obviously the Gar ECL, a deck that has been very successful throughout the set, and if the meta does not change too much, I anticipate will still be a force to be reckoned with in Secret of Power. So what did this deck obtain that is really a big deal? So in my opinion, of course, the biggest upgrade for Gar ECL is the Emergency Power. Emergency Power basically acts as a flexible kind of upgrade. People were playing what's it called, Dark Saber. Dark Saber has the advantage of being played on leader like Gar Saxon, but basically Emergency Power for pretty much everything else is a much better card. It's much more flexible, because obviously if you play Emergency Power for 4, so the same price as Dark Saber, it's gonna give +4/+3, assuming you're playing it on a unit that doesn't have an equipment. It's pretty much just a +4/+3 bonus there. But obviously it can be much bigger than that, and it can be much smaller than that. It has this flexibility of adapting to your curve, which I think is pretty awesome. Another advantage of Emergency Power is the fact that it doesn't get countered by a single upgrade removal. In order to deal with it, you either have to play like a straight up removal, or you have to play Bamboozle, or you have to play a specific card like Kid Fisto, Either Sprites to remove all the upgrades on it. A single upgrade removal, which are the most commonly used, such as Confiscate or these Dynamic Confined Fighters, doesn't actually deal with the Emergency Power. So that's another great advantage of this card over Dark Sabers. So I think this card is, in my opinion, is better than Dark Sabers. Also, the thing is, like Dark Sabers, the fact that it plays on leaders, while Emergency Power doesn't, is not that big of a deal, because Gar Saxon deployment is very late in the game. So usually you actually don't play the it's actually quite awkward to play Dark Sabers on Gar Saxon, because then you're playing off curve. Usually when you get to 6 resources with Gar Saxon, you would much rather play a Barrage, a Craving Power, or a Darth Vader ECL. It's actually the number one thing you want to do on turn 6. Usually Dark Saber is a card you're going to be playing much earlier in the game, basically on curve, basically turn 3, and then on curve you're going to be playing a Dark Saber to kind of put a huge pressure on your opponent. So once again, in that very specific purpose, Emergency Power is just a far better card than Dark Saber. So for me, this is an easy 3 ofs. And obviously the other great thing about Emergency Power is the fact that it combines really, really well with Axe. So we used to play Outer Rim, the Outer Rim Headhunters. Now we're playing Axe. So why are we playing Axe instead? Well, for 2 reasons. First of all, we're playing a bit more upgrades than before. We're playing normally the Nimble Prowess, which we didn't play before. We play even the 3rd one in sideboard. Also after sideboard with the addition of the legal authorities and the Craving Power. There's actually more ways to use his scaling ability than before, which makes it like a slightly better card. But obviously the main reason we are returning to X-Wolf instead of playing the Outer Rim Headhunter is the combination with Emergency Power. So you play X-Wolves on turn 2, and then on turn 3 you play Emergency Power for 3 extra experience token. This unit gets +1/+1 for every upgrades it has on it, so you basically end up with a 10-9 that can attack right away, and as early as turn 3. That will kill the opponent extremely quickly. And this is obviously not a combo that I recommend using against a wide variety of deck. Of course, there's blue decks or yellow decks who are easy time getting rid of something like this, so it is something that I don't necessarily recommend using in every situation. But against our weakest matchup, which is Sabine, it is an absolute game breaker. Like against Sabine, this combo completely changed the matchup. What used to be a really, really bad matchup, when you pull Emergency Power not only on X-Wolf, but just Emergency Power, you go turn 1 Onyx, Squadron Brute, turn 2 Iden Versio, and then turn 3 Emergency Power on the Onyx. You can basically race anything with this. It's crazy. It's very cheesy, but it's you can basically race any aggro deck with this. And this is really the thing that Gar Saxon needed to fight aggro. So Emergency Power, and specifically Emergency Power X-Wolves, is incredibly powerful against a number of decks that simply just don't have a way to deal with this. I'm talking about Sabine ECL, but that's exactly the same story with Hantu ECL. Those decks, unless they decide to play cards that specifically counter this combo, like for example the Kid Fisto Hydrospite, they simply just don't have answers to those kind of things. And that makes a pretty big difference in the way we play the game. So this is really, really helpful, and this really turns the matchup upside down. Another card that's really super helpful in the aggro mirror, whether it's space or ground, but it's even better against ground because you're more likely to have ground unit than space unit, is Nimble Prowess. Nimble Prowess is another great racing card against those aggro deck because it's a 1-cost upgrade. It's very, very cheap. You play this on something. If that thing is not already upgraded, it's going to give a +2/+1 bonus, and it's going to exhaust a unit in the same arena. So Nimble Prowess is another card that basically kind of makes up for one of our weakness. So as I said, Garcia did not like to play against super aggressive deck and did not like to play against super control deck. So unfortunately, we didn't get anything that helps against control. However, we got a lot of things that really, really helps against aggro. And I would argue that Emergency Power is also can be really strong against control. If you get multiple units and your opponent taps out to kill something, you can Emergency Power into a massive unit and you can kind of win the game out of nowhere like this. So Emergency Power is also a decent card against control. But really, in my opinion, this deck has gotten so much better against aggro. So now it's going to have a great matchup against aggro and mid-range. It's gonna have a horrible matchup against hard control. But I don't think it's a big deal because hard control is not... I don't think he's going to see much play, guys. I think hard control hasn't really got much in this set. The only... Dead Ramiro, I think, is the only leader that can potentially bring hard control back. But even that, I'm not super optimistic it will be enough. And so I think this is a really good... this might just be a good moment for Gar Saxon. That is just a really strong deck that's just really got some really good upgrade. In the sideboard, we're also playing the Hyperspace Disaster. I think this card is incredible against space aggro decks, and also, but specifically against Boa, which I anticipate will still see a significant amount of play. So this kind of card can just like completely, it comes into play relatively late in the game at 7, but to be fair, if you are able to kind of hold your ground, reset the board a couple of times with an overall barrage, heal yourself up with Client, you can kind of turn into a pseudo control deck, and Hyperspace Disaster is going to be a great card in that context as well. So for me, this deck, which was already a powerful deck, it was already very well positioned, is getting so much better this set with a couple of cards, and I'm really excited to see what this deck is going to come out as in the upcoming set. Just to let you know that you can pick up Vader, Twilight the Apprentice for €18 on card market at the moment. A pretty cheap card considering how powerful it is, in combination of course with the Ambush cards. Moving on, we got a list. This list is not from me, it is the Sabine ECL of You Can Call Me Al. You know that Al is the Sabine player of Team Enigma, and obviously you can count on him to always jump on the next Sabine build, and this is the build that he came up with. This build has got significant upgrades. So basically, Sabine did not really got a whole lot going on in Legend of the Force, but it got a lot of great tools in this expansion. Notably, 2 major cards that it gets added to this deck. The first one is the Jar Jar Binks. Jar Jar Binks is excellent in Sabine because it's a card that you can resource, so it actually does not clutter your hand. And then as you deploy Sabine, you can give yourself an extra boost of a +2/+2 as it comes to play. And the thing is, like, Jar Jar Binks is not a bad card even later on in the game. It kind of is like it's worse than Fleet Lieutenant, and there's no denying it's worse than Fleet Lieutenant, right? But it's pretty close to Fleet Lieutenant. It's not like that far off in terms of power level. But of course, the fact that he can come into play with Plot with Sabine is a big deal, and it makes Sabine so much more difficult to deal with, and so much more, it makes the deployment even more impactful, putting you even further ahead. It's a deck that also plays a lot of 2-drops, so it's not uncommon whenever you deploy Sabine, you go Sabine, you get a Jar Jar Binks, a +2/+2, and then you get enough resource to play another 2-drop, or even play a Yoda's Lightsaber. So the sequencing of deploying Sabine, get Jar Jar Binks +2/+2, and then putting the Yoda's Lightsaber on it, you end up with an absolute monster of a leader. And it's actually much more it's much more powerful, I think, that something like just putting a Dark Saber on the Sabine. It's much more less risky because you're getting an extra body that protects you against power dark side. I think it's you don't get screwed as much by an upgrade removal. So I think it's like it's actually a kind of a safer way to go for this. Obviously, it requires a combination of 2 cards, but once again, you don't find Yoda's Lightsaber, no problem. You just go with another 2-drop. So I think this Jar Jar Binks deck, instead of going Sabine and going all in on Darksaber and taking the risk of getting absolute blown out, this is like a kind of a much safer way to get yourself a much more impactful Sabine deployment. It's not impossible that Jar Jar Binks will be played alongside Darksaber, but Jar Jar Binks could be the new Darksaber in a sense. Other than this, we obviously got the new card, Karis. She's probably one of the best cards. So basically, when I first reviewed this card, I didn't realize that the spy token actually comes to play ready. Now that I know this card is insane. It is a strong candidate for being the best 2-drop in the game. This 2-drop is just completely insane because, like, okay, 3/2, the only negative things we can say about it is like 3/2 is not very well positioned against 2/4 at the moment, but the fact that it leaves a unit behind means that, okay, if you, even the worst case scenario, which is facing up a 2/4, you get a spy token and you can trade the spy token into the 2/4 to finish it off. So and the fact that it has Eden means that it can't be killed right away. It's obviously an incredible card. It's gonna make control decks basically build their victory against Sabine on the back of Power Darkside and Merciless Contest. Against Sabine, basically the way Sabine players were kind of like playing around this was either to play some Porgs in their deck in order to basically play around Power Darkside, or they would switch to a strategy when they open up with double 1-drop opening. Now they don't need to do that anymore because they can just play Karis, and then she's gonna leave a 2/1 behind, a spy token when she dies, protect you against Paradoxide. It's gonna be such a super big annoyance for the opponent to deal with. So Karis is just an insanely absurdly powerful card. It's gonna change. It's gonna make the control matchup even more favorable than it already is, and it's just an incredible card. It's a rebel as well. It's just the absolute dream card for Sabine. Just like Sabine needed help, it just got this insanely absurd card. I also experimented with a couple of interesting cards on the sideboard. He got himself the Amidala, which is definitely a card that also can be good in the grindy matchup as a 5-drop. Is it really what Sabine needs? I don't know, but it is something that is worth experimenting with. And he's also playing the 3/1 that removes upgrade. Is this better than Fang Fighters? This is going to require us to be tested, but it's definitely another interesting option for the deck as well. So the rest of the deck is pretty much what you already know about, and yeah, this is, I think Sabine is just getting so much better with Karis. I think Jar Jar Binks is also very likely to be a permanent. Jar Jar Binks, there's still some question mark. It is not an heroism card. It doesn't. It's a powerful card, but I don't necessarily think it's going to be an auto include. Karis is definitely going to be an auto include. This is. If you're playing a Sabine, if you're playing a red-white deck that doesn't run this card, you're out of your mind. This card is just insane. Moving on now to my last but not least list. It is the Akbar Data Vault. I've experimented a lot with this list, and this list has gotten a lot of very interesting upgrades in the set. There's mostly 3 cards I would like to shout out, but maybe there's more. So the first one is going to be Face in Your Friends. One of the things that can happen with Akbar sometimes is that because the deck plays has a very, very low curve with a lot of 1-drops, sometimes the deck, and it's not it's an aggro deck, yes, but it's not like a deck that is aiming to win games super quickly. So sometimes the deck has the issue of running out of cards. Face in Your Friends is an excellent way to provide yourself with a wide board early on in the game, get yourself some extra bodies that you can use Akbar's ability to generate some tokens, and it replaces itself, which is big. The deck is also mostly yellow and white, which makes the triple yellow double white requirement quite easy to fulfill in a specific build. Another great addition for the deck is obviously Queen Amidala, another way to kind of widen your board, make a unit that's really hard to deal with, and once again, more extra bodies for Akbar to go wide and really just take over the game. But obviously the big upgrade of this deck, and to me, the card that is going to be an absolute auto-include in every Akbar list, that's going to be for Figure of Unity. Figure of Unity is an absolutely in my opinion, is one of the best payoff for going wide in the entire game. All you need to do is so obviously it's not a card that you want to play against a deck that has answers. It's a kind of card that you want to play when your opponent is tap out, you got a wide board, you play the Figure of Destiny on a unique unit, and we have loads of unique. We got the R2s, we got the Bamboo Frick, we got the Grogu, we got the Leia. We can even have the blue leader, or even on Queen Amidala, it's amazing because Queen cannot really be attacked directly. It can be played on Akbar as well. And when that happens, basically your board becomes an absolute monster. So this is very useful in 2 major situations. The first situation is that you have the board control. Sometimes the deck can struggle to kind of finish games and kind of close games out really quickly once you get a wide board. This is a way to do that. And another major advantage of this card is whenever you're in some kind of racing situation against an aggro deck, and you're in a racing situation, Figure of Unity will just race anything, anytime. It's an unraceable card. So I think this is really a powerful card in this deck. Basically, any deck that likes to go wide is going to like Figure of Unity to some extent, but I think Akbar is probably one of the most popular go wide deck that was meta in set 5. So it's definitely going to benefit from this deck, from this card a lot. Cool. So that's basically kind of the upgrades. So it's a build that I kind of that I was inspired from a recent build that performed in PQ. I'm not an Akbar expert, so I took this as a base, and then I've kind of implemented a new card, made a few changes, and obviously Akbar expert are probably going to find a much better build than I am. But this is kind of like the idea of just going wide, playing Figure of Unity, and just going to town. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. There's plenty of other great build that I want to show you. But obviously, this is going to be a really busy schedule until the release. Thank you so much for following the video, and I'll see you next time.